Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. As we watch the attendee list fill up, I think more and more people are coming. We'll give everyone 30 seconds, but in the meantime, I was hoping that you could open the question box that's in the GoToWebinar panel and give me a what's up if you can hear me and if you can see the screen that we're sharing. You should see a slide that says Handshake Product Roadmap Webinar with 3 college students. Awesome. Okay, now, if you have any, don't usually say this, but I will now. If you have any audio issues, and that sometimes happens, try switching from computer to phone and back or to no audio. So you'll see that, those toggles under the audio panel. I know there's always a couple people who have audio issues, so great, so far so good. Okay, I think I kind of talked through our initial pause. So I'm actually gonna get started to my team. Before we even go any further, I'd like to give you that's right, go back, great. I'd like to give you some housekeeping notes. First of all, we're going to be recording the webinar. So anyone who registered, so that's you who are attending, but also folks who registered and couldn't attend, or if you leave halfway through, we'll get a recording after the event. You'll get it in an email. So just keep in mind, you're going to get a recording. The recording will have the slides, and you can forward that to a colleague who didn't register, but who you think might want to see it. So look out for that. Next, we're going to have a Q&A section at the end of the webinar. So you don't need to wait to ask your questions till then. In fact, sometimes it's easier because we're going to be trying to answer what we can via chat. And if it's a great question that we think lots of people will want to hear the answer to, we may not chat back to you. We may just save it and put in a queue and answer it live during the end. So point being, ask your question whenever. Look out for that, and we'll save it and try to get back to you one way or the other, written or spoken. Finally, again, we're going to send an email with any information that you hear that was like maybe a link that you missed. So that'll come in an email afterwards along with the recording. And finally, after the webinar, we'd really appreciate it if you took the fast survey that pops up in a new browser window. It's how we can tell that we did a good job, what we need to improve on. It helps us kind of measure what to do better next time. So please do take a minute afterwards. We'd love to hear your thoughts. It should take you but a moment. All right, let's go to the next slide. So that's me on the left, Catherine Kelly. I'm the Director of Marketing at Handshake. With us today also is Britt Gergen. He's the Product Marketing Manager at Handshake. Hello, Britt.
Hi, Katie. Good morning. Happy Wednesday.
Good morning. Also with us today, Jake Becker, the Director of Product at Handshake. Hi, Jake.
Hi everyone. Good morning, Katie.
Good morning. And finally, we have Jade Path. She's a product manager at Handshake. Jade, hello.
Hi, everyone.
Today's agenda will be first starting with the Handshake product process, going through an example of how we make our updates, including something that came out recently. Then we're going to talk about the updates to the roadmap, the things that have come out recently and will be coming out, around the themes of access to data, virtual engagement at scale, and bringing the ecosystem together. And then at the end, we have a couple announcements and we'll do the Q&A. All right, so I'm gonna start by talking about our product development process. So if you go to the next slide. Thanks, Britt. This is the process that Handshake follows as we consider any updates or new features. So if you start at the top at the 1, you see the research and strategy phase. That's where we learn from our customers and from the market to decide where we want to invest. So we often hold, in red, you'll see the event that we do or how we engage with clients at each stage. So in red, it says product workshops. We hold product workshops at this stage to understand what you guys are thinking and needing. And if you attend any of those, you know they're very poll heavy and interaction heavy. Then in step 2 is the design phase. Once we decide the focus areas that we want to improve, we start to explore potential designs with our design team. That's usually where we hold what we call mini advisory boards. Again, many of you have probably been a part of those. We invite you to join in the future if you have not. Stage 3 is the build stage. So after the designs are decided, we build new products in 2-week sprints of engineering work. So that means that we define a set of work and the entire team rallies around that they can think can be accomplished in 2 weeks, and they push themselves to finish it by then. And if it's a larger project, they'll break out the work into 2-week sprints. So they'll sort of chunk it out. And that's about the point that you'd have a webinar like this, product roadmap webinar, where we're saying, okay, we've committed to this, we've designed it, we're in the building stage, it has not come out yet, but we're ready to talk to you about like what it is and what's coming. Finally, we get to the test and analyze phase. So before we launch any new feature, we do a ton of testing internally with our quality assurance team, just to make sure the requirements are met. But then the testing doesn't end, because sometimes we'll invite a beta group to use the feature before it's fully released and give us their feedback as well. So that text in red is how we involve university partners at that stage. And then finally, after we release something, we're not done with it. That's the benefit of a SaaS, or a software as a service product, is that it's always being improved on, and that's where your tickets and your feedback come back into play, and we start over, so it's a cycle. So I'm gonna invite my colleague Jade in to kind of tell us about how this came to pass with a very specific release recently, the ability to cancel events, which we knew was a requirement post-COVID outbreak. So Jade, do you want to talk folks through how the product development cycle worked for this specific release?
Yeah, of course. This is a really great one because it is, one piece of events. So I wanted to walk you through how this works for a very particular feature. First, in the research and strategy phase, we really reviewed historical product feedback tickets, making sure that we knew exactly what universities were asking for. And we brought that to the advisory board and the product workshop group in January to really make sure that we were on the right page, that we were on the same page, and that we had gathered all the existing feedback on events in general and canceling events being a part of that feedback. Once we had that research and strategy tweaked based on feedback from the advisory board and product workshop, we then moved into the design phase. What was really important here is that our support and success teams internally really resurfaced this canceling event need during COVID-19 because of the need of so many universities canceling events, moving them online, moving them to different places. So we really started to make sure that we were designing and looking at different ways to implement the idea of canceling events into the product in March. After that, we went through, and I'll talk you through some of the key questions that we answered next, but we started to work with our engineering team to make sure that they knew what the requirements were from a customer standpoint, and that they were able to push back on anything that didn't make sense from a technical complexity standpoint. Once we were fully ready to launch, we started to test and analyze with our quality assurance team. We did testing in early April and then announced this new feature on April 20th, 2020 via the product announcements. And then we'll continue to iterate on this, just like we were iterating on events in general over time. So I wanted to call out that we'll continue to collect product feedback on events in general and the idea of canceling events and improvements we can make there as we move forward, so that this process will just continue, and we'll move into research and strategy again and see if there are other improvements that we can make to make canceling events seamless.
Thanks, Jade. Jade, before you move on to the next slide, I do want to make sure that just to say, and she's going to talk through some of the trade-offs that we make, because it's not quite straightforward what we'd even choose or how we would put something out. But I also want to connect this to the survey that folks are going to get at the end. Not to put too fine a point on it, but something that this team holds themselves to and really tries to incorporate now in all of our communications, all of our webinars, and all of our work is explaining how we make things, because we never want it to be a mystery. And frankly, we've gotten that feedback before. It's just unnecessary. It shouldn't be a mystery. It should be totally transparent. So keep in mind, this is a great time to ask questions too about what Jade's about to talk through, because we are going to ask, do you understand how we make our products? That's something that we really care about. So just keeping, frankly, there's a quiz later. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, Jade, go ahead.
Yeah, we'll move on to the next slide and talk you through some of the key decisions. So canceling events sounds like a small update, just one small piece of events, but really wanted to bring to life here what it means when we think about adding a feature like canceling events and what we need to consider. So first is just the workflow in general. Where should this option exist, and where does it make sense as a part of the Career Center workflow? Should it be within the details page or on the list page? Where and when are you thinking about canceling events, and who are the relevant stakeholders that need to be notified are things that we consider. We ultimately decided to put this on the details page, understanding that the list page might make more sense if you were canceling in bulk, many at once. So that feeds right into the next question we ask ourselves. What are the use cases for bulk canceling events? Obviously, in situations like COVID-19, it might be necessary, but how many events have been canceled in the last few months? And we really look at that data to understand what type of impact will this make. And from our data and research, we determined that bulk canceling events wasn't a feature that we were going to implement at this time. It's, again, something that we might come back to within that product cycle. So we decided just to keep it on the details page and limit it to just canceling one event at a time. And that really is because of what we thought about when we were thinking about who to notify. Should students be notified if they're registered? And should they be notified automatically? Which employers should be notified? Employer contacts your institution, those that are planning on attending the event, and should they be notified automatically? We ultimately decided for these two cases that we wanted to leave it up to career services to notify students if they'd like, and employer contacts if they would like. So that really meant that we needed to keep the cancel option within the details page so we could give you that flexibility in notifying those students and employers. And finally, in reporting, this is something that we consider as a part of every feature release. And should we include information in the quick downloads for events that are canceled and update that canceled status? Should we update Handshake Insights, and which explorers within Handshake Insights would need to be updated? So there are some complex decisions that need to be made across, just the workflow itself, all the way to notifications associated and reporting. So wanted to make sure to call out some of the key questions we asked ourselves as we started to build out canceling events.
Great, thanks, Jade. And just to kind of give an overview of what this means cumulatively, so this is just in 2020 so far. It's only the end of May. It's somehow also been 5 years since January, so I can't tell if this is a lot or a little, but we've done 8 mini advisory boards, which are those meetings at the design phase that we did on appointments, events, and data reporting. We had over 75 schools participate across all types of institutions. And we've tracked 200 product feedback tickets to inform the strategy at that iterate stage at the top of the cycle. All right, so now enough of that lesson that you will be quizzed on later. Now let's go into what's coming out and the rest of this year. The 2020 product theme, so everything you're about to see will fall into one of these buckets, are the ability to foster meaningful virtual student engagement at scale. We put that virtual word in because everything is virtual that we're thinking about now. Demonstrating success with self-service analytics. We have some exciting reporting updates to share with you guys. And bringing all 3 sides of the Handshake community together. And to this audience, I will absolutely say that internally, that's really meant how we can recenter and refocus on universities by strengthening the product that universities use, specifically the Career Center workflow tools, and also the relationships that we have with you guys. So that's been a big push for us in 2020. So with that, I believe I'm handing it over. Jade?
Yep. So I'm going to talk you through our first theme here, which is virtual engagement at scale. So I'm going to walk you through our plans for virtual career fairs this fall and some of the recent improvements that we've made. I'll start with the virtual fair toggle, which is live in the product right now. So this is the ability for you as you're creating a career fair in the system to indicate that you plan on this being a virtual career fair. There will be features associated with this that continue to come out over the summer. So this is really just to help your teams and Handshake prepare for some of those new features as they're released. There will be a couple new fields that are added to this form over the next few weeks, and so we'll keep you posted on those as they come out. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. So as you mark those fairs as virtual, that's going to unlock some features that are coming in later on in July. So we want to make sure that this virtual fair product that we're building creates effective virtual group sessions so that all students can learn about employers that interest them. It will also have the option for employers and students to schedule one-on-one slots, and they can schedule those before and during the fair to make those meaningful connections, because we understand the importance of that in-person, one-on-one conversation. And then finally, we want to make sure that we have true student and employer engagement through video, audio, and text-based chat. We heard over and over from students that the idea of video was necessary to help feel that personal connection that they get from a career fair. So here's an example. You can see a recruiter and a student connecting via video and using information that's already in Handshake to help guide the conversation and then follow up within Handshake. So what's really great is that career services students and employers can use all the information already in the system to create more meaningful connection and then to really report on the success of this using that information as it comes together. So we're really excited about the new virtual affairs product coming this summer.
Hey, Jade,
And then,
before you move
yeah,
on, I just want to can you explain, we have on the previous slide, Virtual Affairs 1.0, and I know that that question came up last time, and I'd rather us just like address that while people are thinking about it. Why do we call it 1.0?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we want to make sure that for this virtual affairs product that we release in the summer, that it meets all the needs that we've learned from students, employers, and career services. And that means that there will be some things that come later on in the experience that we know are going to make it better. But in 1.0, we're really focused on making the experience work for all three sides of the network with the key functionality that those group schedules, the one-on-one slots, the embedded video, and making that work really, really well this summer before we start to add on some of the more advanced recommendations and advanced student experience features. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's very helpful. I know that people have asked us before, so it definitely is it's not a beta, fully functional, ready to go, meets everyone's needs in the fall. And you're right, it's the more advanced features that we're waiting on because we want to get something great out the door now. So thanks, Jade.
Yeah, and we're really working with our university teams in particular to make sure that we're on the same page and really, taking some of these key decisions back to our university partners through this process.
Hey, Jade, and then a quick follow-up just came in. We said advanced features. Can you give an example of something that's like we're really seriously considering, but for the future, just to illustrate what you mean by that?
Yeah, if you go ahead and go to the next slide, I'll actually talk through a couple of things here. So coming by September, so still coming for the fall, but maybe not for that initial July launch, are things like recommended employer sessions for students, and then making sure to integrate more relevant information into existing areas of Handshake, like emails that recommend employers looking for students like you. We'll also be working on event relevancy post the initial 1.0 launch, which will be something that could come after. And we want to expand on this and surface more information up front so that students can continue to learn about company and employee perspectives. And then want to make sure that we highlight that we're building two new powerful capabilities for real-time virtual engagement this fall. The first is this virtual career fairs product that we just talked about. And universities will continue to be at the center of that career fair experience, and they will continue to market opportunities to students and invite a wide variety of employers to recruit on their campuses. Employers will also be able to use our virtual tool set to proactively recruit through messages, virtual events, and interviews. And both of these methods of engagement will use similar workflows that we'll be building out over the next 2 months. So since we already have millions of students attending events and receiving messages in Handshake, these tools will continue to build on that engagement that we already see in the network. So really excited about these two new types of engagement that we'll see this fall. And then we want to follow up here as we consider new virtual engagement opportunities for universities. What update is more relevant to your immediate needs? You can go to the link at the top of this slide and respond here. This will really help us. So as we think about expanding on virtual engagement, right now we're focused on virtual fairs. But like I said, we're building out more experiences for end-to-end virtual recruiting and virtual career services. So we want to understand where we could make the biggest impact here, if that's within virtual appointments for your office or within the ability to actually schedule time within virtual events. Looks like we have some support for one-on-one time slots within virtual events.
Is everyone biased because they can see what their peers are answering? Feel free to break out if you'd like. Okay, okay, great. Now it happened. Okay, good.
Some support for virtual appointments. Like I said, this will be helpful for us as we think about the roadmap moving into the fall and building out virtual tools for all of your career services offerings. We'll give this just a couple more seconds. Okay, looks like a few more in support of the ability to schedule virtual appointments. Okay, I'll hand it over to Jake then.
Great. Thanks, Jade. So, as Katie alluded to earlier, we are planning a number of updates to our data reporting systems in Handshake, specifically for career services folks. So I'm happy to walk through what those individual releases are and when you can expect those to come online. So before I dive into the specifics of individual feature updates, did want to highlight that last month we released the Who's Hiring dashboard. Hopefully folks were able to look at that. That's of course live and constantly updating. So as more jobs come online, more companies start reopening, you'll see those dashboards updating. This employer messaging dashboard is being developed now. It should come online towards the end of June. Really, excuse me, I think I muted for a second. Which employers are sending the most messages to your students? Which students are receiving the most messages? What is the general impact and scale of the outreach that's happening on Handshake? So excited to be rolling that out in the next couple months. Also coming in June are updates to our report templates. We are essentially merging a bunch of different fields in the student, employer, and staff reports. So historically, you might recall you had to sort of export a lot of those reports, maybe combine them with data from other systems, or maybe export multiple reports and merge them together. We are combining all of those into a single sort of mega report, and that mega report will allow fewer steps, easier analysis across all those fields. And with that, so the flip side of that is allowing descriptions on each of those fields. So knowing, what a particular field means with respect to the Handshake schema and our particular data representation of that. So as you think about getting data into your third-party systems or doing any further analysis on it, you know what that represents, and you're not trying to guess what an appointment start date means in the context of the system, for example. Coming later this summer, this has been one of our top requested features from partners over the last couple of years. You may be familiar with the ability to essentially save off a link to a particular report. Our support and success folks are working constantly with partners to share those deep links. That type of saving will be now done natively within Handshake itself. So you can create a report, give it a name, set the visibility for those reports either to yourself, your school, or the entire network. So if you're working on a particular export and you only want it to be visible to you because you're just working on it, you're still kind of figuring it out, great, it's private to you. You can also make that visible to your school. So if everyone in your department might benefit from this, you can allow them to see it. Or the entire network, right? So again, this is not your school's data that's visible to the network. It's the structure of that data in the template. So if you come up with a great way of exporting or visualizing, jobs that are visible to your computer science students, that can now be visible to other schools. You can share that with your colleagues. And with that comes viewing those popular reports around the network. So we can push out things to you that you might find valuable over time. The second step of saved reports, and if you head to the next slide, is essentially scheduling those reports to be easily exported and integrated with other tools. So within Handshake, you'll be able to configure the frequency of those exports, whether daily, weekly, monthly, etc. The format, so CSV, JSON, if you're familiar with slightly more technical formatting, PDF, images, and the destination. So typically we'll see folks want to send those reports to their email. So say every Monday morning you get a series of reports about what's happening in your school. That may result in some more manual manipulation downstream, right? You might want to pull that into Excel. You might want to combine that with other data sets from other systems. That's great. That's still possible. Alternatively, we'll be adding the ability to export to an SFTP, which is essentially a secure cloud storage system that you'll be able to set up. Most folks have that set up already. And from there, there's scripts to essentially drop that data into whatever third-party system, whether it's your internal data warehouse, a data lake, student information systems, Salesforce, et cetera, so that you can start leveraging that data in whatever other system of record you see most valuable. So we'll work with partners on bridging that sort of automated workflow from Handshake into those tools, and we hope this is a really, really important first step down that path. Great. Lastly, so this actually launched internally, not visible to folks externally just yet, but tracking the ability around appointments, events, and fairs, and knowing a bunch of metadata around students taking those actions so that we can report on more longitudinal data sets over time. So we started to capture that data back in the back end so that coming later this year, we can start exposing more historical trends and longitudinal data that can make some of that analysis more meaningful. And secondly, embedding some of that meaningful data into your core workflows. So this is an example of what a student page may look like. If you're looking at the student page, bringing some meaningful, timely information to the top of that screen to say, you know, this is something you might be able to take action on, right? This is engaging, it's somewhat actionable, so that you're not hunting for salient information, right? We can bring it to the fore and help you make good choices. So with that, we did want to ask folks, related specifically to reporting, you know, what types of reports might you be interested in? And what types of information do you want to pull out of Handshake and really leverage on a day-to-day basis?
And Jake, while people are answering, and especially because I did hear that people said they didn't have time, so we'll give them more time. Check your Slack because our friend Will made a really good point and clarification that I think we should bring up, and I'd like you to speak to. We can say that
Yes.
now, or we can wait till the poll comes in. But I wanted to draw your attention.
No, that's great. So just to reiterate, so Will basically asked about the sharing of reports between schools, and to double clarify this. So think of it as a template. So the report will run on your data and your data only. So I can create a great template in my school, share that template with you, and when you run it, you'll see your data, and when I run it, I'll see my data. So it's not sharing personally identifiable information or any student data between schools. So just want to clarify that.
Thank you. And Jake, the final thing I'll say is that we all want to be wherever the beautiful birds are singing, which is where you are, because they're lovely.
It's an audio track. It's just trying to make it a little bit more pleasant to be on a webinar. Great. So yeah, it looks like the majority of folks are looking to take data to help drive student engagement and to really illustrate some of the programming that their office is doing with the rest of the school, which makes sense and is consistent with a lot of feedback we've received over the past few months and years from partners. So it's great. Thank you for sharing. And with that, I think I'll hand over to Britt to talk through some of our next updates.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. With Jake, you get bird noise, and with me, you get the ever-present worry that the garage door is going to open beneath me and shake my entire room. I don't think it's going to happen, but the risk is there. I'm really excited to talk to you all about our efforts to bring our ecosystem together. So as you all know, Handshake's position at the nexus of higher ed, students, and employers gives us a really unique opportunity to forge connections between those groups. And doing so has become even more critical in the COVID-19 era. So a lot of the work that we're doing is really all about fostering those connections. So just to kind of frame the next set of updates that I'm going to talk about, I wanted to share some recent survey data that we collected about the impact of COVID-19 on students. The statistics you see here are based on 2 surveys. One went out in mid-March. We collected 1,002 student responses, and the other one went out in early April and collected 527 student responses. The number one impact of COVID-19 on students' career search was the reduction in the number of jobs, or job inventory. We also learned that 69% of students want their career center to help them facilitate connections with employers, and 51% want to help them uncover who is still hiring. This information is really helpful in understanding how you can help your students and how to frame the value of Handshake to them. And it also speaks to many of the updates that we've released and are currently building that aim to supplement the great work that you're doing. And you can really see the impact of that research in our marketing toolkit, which we relaunched a few weeks ago. For those who aren't, I said relaunched. For those who aren't familiar, the marketing toolkit is a repository of pre-built marketing assets like presentations, one-pagers, blog posts, social assets that you can use to promote Handshake to students. And we put a lot of work into ensuring that these assets can be used via virtual channels and that they appropriately address student needs in the COVID-19 era. We'll also be adding more assets to the toolkit over the coming months. And as you can see, there are several topics we'll be highlighting that aim to address student concerns. Things like finding a job remotely, succeeding at work remotely, highlighting interesting employers, and also student success stories to galvanize students and help them feel agency in this time. The link to the toolkit is there on the slide, and I'm also going to throw it in the chat. One thing to note is that if you used the toolkit last year, the URL is different, though if you use the old URL, it will redirect to the correct page. But here it is in the chat, and you should absolutely check it out. All right, another way we're looking to address student concerns in the COVID-19 era is via updates to the homepage. So first, in order to help students feel that they have agency in this new era, we've introduced a module sharing 3 recommended actions that students can take to advance their career search. Things like finding and following employers so that they can get regular updates about new jobs posted and events. Finding and saving jobs they're interested in so that they can come back to them later. That also helps feed our relevancy algorithms so that we can serve them more good job recommendations. And then keeping your interests up to date. This is, of course, important for job recommendations, and it also helps employers find students proactively, send them messages, and kind of make them aware of job postings they think it would be a great candidate for. Meanwhile, in order to help with the job inventory concern, we just introduced a newly designed job card that features a red fresh tag for positions that have been posted in the last 2 weeks. We also have plans to update this so that the fresh tag is applied to jobs that employers are actively promoting. So for example, in addition to showing you a fresh tag on jobs that were posted within the last 2 weeks, we'll also show you the tag if an employer has recently messaged students about that job, suggesting they're still actively recruiting for it. We're also making updates to the student job search page. So these updates were built based on a lot of user research that we did with students. And in those research sessions, we noticed a few key trends. First, students are really fond of scrolling through jobs, skimming the titles or descriptions, and then saving promising leads that they're going to delve into later. With this workflow in mind, we also found that the job show page, so what you see over here on the right, basically the page that shows all of the job's details, that page could be optimized to give students all of the information they needed to make that quick call to save the job and view it later at a glance. So essentially, we wanted to make sure that we were highlighting the most relevant information that would help students quickly understand if they wanted to learn more. So the updates that we have just started rolling out, actually, I believe as of today or tomorrow, they will start rolling out to a small percentage of students. We're giving a visual refresh to the search interface and to the job show page that focus on making it less busy and bringing relevant job details to the fore. There's also going to be a new prominence put on the option to save jobs. You can see it represented as the bookmark icon. which is right here and also over here. And you'll also see that Saved Jobs now have their own tab in the upper left-hand corner. So you can click there to go see your jobs that you saved really quickly. Next up, we wanted to give employers tools to identify great students and reach out to them both proactively and thoughtfully. So the Candidate Hub, which is a feature that'll launch later this summer, is meant to act as a new student discovery tool for recruiters. So this means when recruiters are looking for new students to connect with, the Candidate Hub will feature students who are a good match based on the recruiter's posted positions. And it will also allow recruiters to see how students have interacted with them in the past. And that means that they'll be able to take a more thoughtful approach to reaching out to them, fully understanding how the student has engaged with them. Ultimately, we want to help employers engage more students and also ensure that they're using thoughtful and targeted outreach. And just to give a little bit more detail on that, here are a few more mock-ups from the Candidate Hub updates. So on the left, you can see how employers will be able to flip through student profiles based on their search results. So going from that first page that we saw, they click into a profile, they'll see a slightly updated interface that includes, over here on the left, a little panel that helps them understand past engagements they've had with that student. So that summary of touch points can really help them provides a better backdrop for kind of crafting a message and outreach. We're also going to be introducing weekly digest emails for recruiters that feature recommended students based on the jobs they have posted. And again, the goal here is to help recruiters discover new students that they want to connect with and give them relevant context to reach out on a regular basis. Next, we've discussed employer ambassadors in previous webinars, but I wanted to call them out again as an important part of Premium Employers' virtual strategy. These ambassadors can be employees of the company who are also alumni of your institution, or they might have a similar background to the ideal candidate. And overall, they're used to help bring a more personalized touch to messages sent to your students. So right now you can feature an ambassador profile in a message that you send and offer that as an opportunity for the student to connect with the ambassador. So what's going to be coming over the next couple of months is that we're building new ways to highlight ambassadors in places like the company profile page, on job postings, and on event pages as well, so that students have more ways to learn about what it's like to work for a company and connect with people who understand their background. So this is another way that premium employers can bring a more personal touch to the outreach that they're doing with students. And finally, I wanted to highlight a project we're working on for release later this year. We're building an update that will allow students to share a personal email address as alternate contact information. Not only is this going to enable higher engagement with students via email, but it also gives your team a way to stay connected with students once they become alumni. I've had a lot of conversations with our partners where they've shared that personal email collection is cumbersome. Often you are kind of assembling different pieces from your alumni office, from other collection efforts, maybe from the First Destination survey. So we hope that this additional source of personal emails, which of course you'll have access to in Handshake, will help you maintain better contact with alumni over time. So to wrap us up, I wanted to show a quick high-level timeline that recaps some of our bigger releases coming over the next few months. So coming soon, or I guess you could say coming within the next month or so, we'll be releasing the employer messaging dashboard, merged reports and data definitions, updates to the student job search, and the candidate hub for employers. It should also be noted that the candidate hub will be available in different forms, both for free employers and for premium employers. So both will be able to take advantage of that. The premium employer experience will have slightly more filtering, and they'll get more information on past engagements with the student. Before back to school, we'll also be releasing the saved and scheduled reports features, as well as the 1.0 version of our virtual fair solution. And then over the course of the fall, we'll be releasing actionable analytics, point-in-time reporting, and that's also when you can expect personal email collection to become an option as well. I also wanted to give a quick plug for our newly launched training hub called Handshake Academy. We've seeded the Academy with several refreshed training courses that are appropriate for Handshake newbies and super users alike. And we'll be adding new training content over the coming weeks and months that coincides with major product launches like reporting and virtual fairs. So this will be a great place to go to refresh yourself on Handshake features, or if you have new staff members, to teach them how to use the platform. You can access the Academy now by going to academy.joinhandshake.com. So definitely go check it out. And I'm going to throw this link in the chat as well so that you have it. There we go. And last but not least, I send out a bi-weekly newsletter that features product updates, upcoming events, partner spotlights, Handshake tips, and a lot more. If you're already receiving it, I hope you find it helpful. And if you're interested in receiving it, I pull my contact list based on those folks who have the Handshake point of contact role enabled on their Handshake account. You can see what it looks like on the screen. I'm also going to share a Help Center article that runs through how to add that to your account. So if you aren't currently getting the email and would like to, this link has the instructions on how to add that role to your account, and that will get you added to my newsletters moving forward. The newsletters are really great, and I try to make them delightful too. Way to stay in the loop on all of Handshake's product plans. So it's a great way to stay in the loop.
Hey, Britt.
And with that, yes.
They're asking if more than one person can be a point of contact in the system. Can you let folks know about that?
I sure can. So you can have as many points of contact as you would like. And again, doing this is mainly a way for you to indicate that you would like to receive emails from us about things like product updates and upcoming events. So yes, as many people as you would like to have as point of contact can be designated as such.
And I want to wrap up that section by saying someone just wrote in and said your emails are delightful, Britt. And as your manager, I want to agree with that. I want to plus one.
That's very kind to whoever shared that. I'm glad you like them.
So we have a lot of questions that folks wrote in. So we're trying to we're trying to get all of them answered. Okay, so I'm going to start by answering. We'll do some live. So Jake, Britt, get ready. And we'll be chatting to you guys as well. All right, so we had a few questions about what is employer premium. Handshake team, I'm going to take a stab at answering this just so everyone knows I'm one of the newer people on the team. And then perhaps you could jump in if I've missed anything, but I'm just going to kind of roll up what does it mean to be a premium employer? So I'll just start by saying, so we have over 500,000 employers on our platform, and the majority of them are not premium, okay? So we'll start by saying there's a lot of capability and functionality that all employers have. It's very important for us that all employers have without having to pay. So those include the ability to post jobs on the nationwide network, the ability to attend careers fairs, the ability to attend, host, and collect RSVPs for off-campus or on-campus or virtual events. You can tell I'm taking this from older copy because on-campus has not been a thing recently, with no limits on the number of events or RSVPs, the ability to collect applicants and manage on-campus interviews, the ability to reach out to job applicants and send unlimited messages to those students, the students who have already raised their hand and applied, the ability to proactively message up to 100 students per semester who they haven't already connected to, subject to what we call their trust score being over 80. So we have a special dedicated team to protect the trust and safety of all of our users, who is auditing, giving all of our employers a trust score of over 80. So that's what everyone can do, which will help differentiate what the premium employers are able to do above and beyond that. It is a paid program, and they're able to do all the same core activities as all the other employers, but in addition, they also have increased, they have a few other ways to educate and engage students, including more analytics, unsurprising that will come with it, the ability to brand their profile on jobs, so they can add recruiting videos, so sort of like some extra bells and whistles around branding, more event management, so more around managing RSVPs and checking in attendees, and then the ability to campaign to students who have made their profiles public or have previously interacted with that employer, And if they have to have an acceptable trust score. So they're able to anonymously aggregate by information such as skills, organization, coursework, GPA, and location. So hopefully that answers the questions about premium for folks. Did I get that all right, Handshake team?
Yes.
Great.
Sounded good to me.
Okay. All right. So let's go back to our question list here. All right, Jade, we can both jump in on this one. For virtual career fairs this fall, will schools be limited to the number of fairs or the number of participants? So this is that question about caps. I think it's worth addressing. So do you want to take a stab and I can weigh in too?
Yeah, we will have more information about specific requirements in that webinar coming up on virtual fairs. But the idea is that we won't be capping on the number of employers or the number of students that can attend your fairs. And this fall we don't plan on actually capping the number of fairs or the amount of the number of fairs that you can host as an institution. We will be monitoring very closely for how many fairs universities have, how many hours, and kind of creating some more space for us to understand what does usage look like. But for right now, capacity in the fall will not be limited on employer and student registrations. You'll be able to engage with, as many as you can. And then we'll be learning more about the number of fairs and the length of those fairs. We might limit on the length just for scheduling purposes, but we'll have more details and specifics to share in that June webinar.
And I'll just
Katie, anything to add there?
Yeah, thanks. I'm just going to follow up and say that just again, in the interest of transparency. So it's obviously very unprecedented what's happening right now. And so our first priority is to make sure that schools have access to this feature and the ability to use it, which is why we've committed to a free fall without caps as far as we can manage, as Jade said. So all I'll say is that we're researching now because the majority of the cost that Handshake will incur from virtual fairs comes from video technology, to be perfectly honest. And so we're going to use historical data and what we learn in the fall to better understand how we might have to later put caps in place. But what I can say is we've measured all historical data on virtual fairs, and so what we're looking at are not caps that I know that some of our competitors use that are in like the 10s and the 20s. What we're talking about covering hopefully 99% of all fair usage. So just to put some numbers on that, we're trying to make it inclusive for everyone and not really place any limitations on if we can, especially not this fall. All right. Jade, this is another fair question, and then we'll skip around and get to some other topics, go back and forth. What student and resume data will be available to the employers in the FAIR module?
That's a great question. Similar to what's available today to employers, if they're engaging with students via job applications or event registrations, the employer will have access to the student's profile information as well as any public resumes that they've uploaded. And obviously that will still respect the student. If the student has chosen to hide their GPA from their profile, for example, those types of options will be respected.
Great, thanks, Jade. Let's ask this insights question. Jake, this is gonna be for you. Any updates on making the job hunt functionality on a student's profile actually reportable? That is viewable and sortable by career services staff, employers. Staff, question mark, employers, question mark, and this is from Jonathan.
Yeah. Hi, Jonathan. Good to chat with you again. Yeah, so short answer is we're constantly going through our existing reports to, add new fields, add different types of dashboards. So this is definitely on the table. It's not part of the initial release that we're planning for early and midsummer. But as we're tracking more and more feedback around dashboards, report functionality, this may very well make its way to the top of the list as we get later into the year.
Great, thank you. And Jake, we'll keep it with you. And someone, Marcia asked, does secure cloud storage export include a script for Tableau?
Yeah, so that's an important point, and I'm actually going to maybe speak a little bit to generally sort of how data gets from an SFTP into third-party systems, Tableau being a very common one. So every third-party system has a different mechanism for import. Some you could leverage an API, some may have import plugins. For example, Salesforce is a plugin that you point it to an SFTP, it recognizes a new file exists, and it pulls that file in based on a set of mappings or configurations you put on it. So when Handshake was designing this out, instead of building spot solutions and trying to build integrations to Salesforce and to Illusion and to Oracle and to each one of these separate services one by one over many, many months, we decided a more generic approach. That being said, there are out-of-the-box plugins, out-of-the-box scripts, out-of-the-box mechanisms for each of these fairly common third-party systems, again, Tableau being an extremely common one, to pull either a JSON file or a CSV from a centralized location, an SFTP being a very secure one, given that it's student data, and automate the ingestion into your system. I imagine there's going to be modifications of that file, things like changing fname to first name and changing, email address configurations and things like that. And that can all be part of that import script. So a little bit of a broader answer, but the goal would be to allow the majority of our partners get this data into whatever systems they're hoping to do.
Great, thanks, Jake. Jade, I have another one for you here, and it's asking about the video features for virtual fairs. And Liz asked this question. She said, to clarify, the video features for virtual fairs will be available to employers to use for virtual interviews, etc., elsewhere in the system in the future. That is a great clarification.
Yeah, this is a really good question. And the embedded video features right now for all employers will likely just be available via virtual career fairs. We're right now evaluating, we'll have more information soon on where else we'll be embedding the video features and which employers that will be available to.
Great. And let's ask another here. This is from Christy. For you, Jade, would the ability to schedule one-on-one slots in non-virtual events also be on the roadmap?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And as we start to talk about events, scheduling within events in general, we haven't discussed whether or not, that will make it to the roadmap this fall, but I think it is something really important that we'll keep our eye on is, where does it make more sense? Just appointments in general versus scheduling within events. I think that's a really good call out that we'll keep in mind, not on the roadmap at this time, but something that could make it in there as we continue to discuss.
Sweet. And since we're just on this virtual fair topic, I love this question because I'm sure that a lot of people will have this question. So this one's from Marcia. Jade, it's for you. If we would like to launch our Fall Career Expo before the virtual software is available in July, and also, Marcia, you said July 1st, so I just want to clarify. It's definitely not July 1st, so I'll just be very straightforward there. It'll probably be, right, Jade, a bit later in July, so clarification. So I'll ask the question again. If we'd like to launch our Fall Career Expo before the virtual software is available in July, should we select the physical location radio button since new fields will be added? Ongoing for virtual session? Question. Switching to virtual once it's launched.
Yeah, we're going to add one more field probably this week sometime, but we'll notify you via the product announcements when this comes out. It will be a host field, which will allow you to designate if the field is being hosted in Handshake or externally, because we do understand that some virtual fairs will be hosted externally. And you'll be able to use that field so you can still say that the fair is virtual, but hosted elsewhere. So we'll let you know as soon as that's live. That will make it really clear. So right now, I would keep it as virtual and then just keep your eyes out for that new host field that you can use.
Great, thanks, Jade. Okay, this is a question for Britt. The question is, student interface update for a small percentage of students, ellipses, question mark. What is the timeline for it to roll out to all? Britt.
Thank you for including the punctuation. That was really helpful. This is a great question, and this actually is a process that I can talk about that applies to a lot of the rollouts that we do, especially on the student side. So again, just to clarify, I mentioned that this would be rolled out to a small group of students first, and then to a larger group of students over time. And the reason we do that is to, even after going through all of the quality assurance, we just want to do one final check to make sure things are running smoothly before we roll out to a large number of students. So typically an initial rollout will go out to 1% of students. We'll keep it there for a couple of hours to a day just to make sure that things are running smoothly. And then we'll quickly ramp up to anywhere from 10 to 50% of students. We usually hang out at around 50%, 10 to 50% for maybe up to a week, and then we'll roll out to everybody after that. So with the job search updates, you can expect that it'll be probably at about 50% of students within a day of it launching, and then it'll roll out slowly to the rest of the student body over the following week. I'll make sure to add some additional detail into this week's product announcement and future newsletters as well. But again, this is something that our team uses pretty regularly for product updates, just to make sure that things go smoothly when we roll them out. Hopefully that helped answer the question.
Yeah, thank you, Britt. That was helpful. I have another question here, Jake, that I would love you to answer. But before I get to it, I do want to say that there's so many questions on virtual fairs, which we understand. We know that it's the time for you guys to be planning those, and it's completely understandable that you have all these questions. Therefore, we're going to have a demo webinar on June 17th and 18th. I will put the link in the chat. We really invite you to come to that. We understand that the pace of our production here, which was kicked off post-COVID, as we all kind of reoriented to this new weird reality, means that you guys are having to take a lot on faith. We understand that's kind of awkward, and so we want to invite you to this so that you're kind of part of this development journey with us, and you can see what we have in mid-June. And I think that will also help answer a lot of these questions. And we'll stick that in the chat now, and we'll also put it in the email. The registration link we'll put in the email that you guys get with the recording. So just to put a button on that. Jake, this question came up. It's probably worth repeating for everyone with regards to the saved reports. Lori had asked, if we have saved reports, will we need to rewrite them so that they still run the same information? Even with the field consolidation, old report links will continue to work, right?
Yes, they will. So we know that over the years, a lot of folks have saved off links. They've save that in some Excel file or on their local computer or in some email. So those will still exist. The goal is over time that saving functionality lives more natively within Handshake. It should be easier for everyone involved. So those existing links will exist. When you go there, you'll be able to run that report, and there'll be an option to essentially duplicate and give that new report a name, so you can save it more natively in the system itself, and ditch the old link if you so choose. So.
Great, thank you. As a last question here, I want to, Jade, this one will be for you. It's another fair one, and then we'll wrap up everything. The question is, will a multi-day fair count as one fair or multiple fairs? This is from Amy.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Right now, we're still deciding how that will work given the scheduling that will be associated with virtual fairs. So there might be some updates that we share in June regarding how to best set up virtual fairs. But a multi-day fair is technically multiple fairs, but we'll talk more in the June webinar about exactly how we recommend setting these up. So not exactly sure yet, but we'll follow up.
So but you'll also have the ability to have fairs over multiple days. It's sort of how maybe they're set up or branded. So that's a good thing to follow up on, and we can keep that in mind as we track all of these questions. And there are topics that we will bring up in June. So we really appreciate everyone asking them. It also helps us develop the collateral that we know that people will need if we know the questions that they're asking. So with that, we have hit our time. I want to say thank you to everyone who attended, and a lot of people were very, very engaged. We really appreciate that. It helps us understand what you guys are thinking. And thank you also to everyone who presented today. We appreciate your time. Take care, everyone. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon.